people, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. My name is Dr. Grace D. Gipson, Assistant Professor in the Department of African American Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University.
And I am Dr. Kenneth Williams. I'm a visiting assistant professor in the Department of African Studies at the University of Pittsburgh.
All right, so we always got to get the business taken care of before we dive in. We want to acknowledge and recognize the legacy of the passing of Vernon Jordan, a huge staple in the civil rights community, a huge staple in the world. I actually had the fortunate opportunity to get a chance to meet him a few years ago, and truly a giant in the game, and someone definitely that will be missed.
Absolutely. I didn't know you met. Did you say you met him?
Say it again.
You said you met him?
I did, yeah, a couple years ago. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. He has been. He was. I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but his legacy was important to me, and of course, my community in Atlanta. So we must give honor to him at this moment.
And so this is a certain month going on, right? I think something really pretty significant.
It's Women History Month. So I think we should take this time to celebrate us because we're women and we're enjoying life. And also I think it's important that we acknowledge some unsung heroes in our own life.
Yes.
And I'm speaking specifically to our mothers, like my mother who passed away in 2002, Catherine Penn Robinson.
And definitely got to put out there my mother, Doris Gipson. These are, both of these women are key figures in our life. They are, soldiers who have done the work, and and those who continue to, we continue to try to make them proud. We continue to honor them, and it's not often that we get a chance to acknowledge and speak their names and say who they are. So we definitely want to make sure we did that at this time.
Right. They led the way. They paved the way for us, and very inspiring. And your mom's awesome. I just want to throw it out there. She's so great. My mom's great too. Just want to throw it out there as well. But so now we're going to go right into Lovecraft Country.
Yes,
and today we're going to talk about 2 episodes, 5 and 6. But I want to first speak about episode 5, Strange Case. Now, this episode, we hear more about Ruby, or we learn more about Ruby. And also we get more insight into Montrose's queerness.
Yes.
So the first thing I want to talk about that to me is a big theme that, me and you spoke about was whiteness and privilege in this episode.
Yeah.
Especially, with the first scene. So everything, the credits, the previous episode, the first thing you see is Ruby waking up white.
Yeah.
And I remember when we first saw this, she's like, what is going on?
Right.
What is this? And did we know it was Ruby when we first saw it?
No, that was the thing. You're just kind of like, oh, we got a new character. Maybe something, that we didn't know about, or someone is entering into the storyline. So yeah, we did not realize that was Ruby at all.
No. So when she gets out of this bed, and eventually she's in town, of course, she's in town. And as she's walking in town, she's a bit disoriented because, again, at this point, this white woman doesn't know what's going on. Like, she's out of it, sometimes disoriented. And she runs into a group of Black people, not necessarily a group, they were just normally walking and shopping, and she was in front of a store, and they were asking her, like, are you okay? Caring about her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, still disoriented. Then the police shows up. And next thing you know, there is this Black boy who's walking by, a teenager at most, and he has popcorn in his hand. Mm-hmm. And they assume that he was trying to rape her.
Right.
And it was just very interesting, even though she was able to say no, he did not, he was not trying to do anything, officer, like, she stopped it. But then they were like, okay, let's care for her, let's bring her home. And even at this moment, you see the difference in policing.
Right,
How
right,
this little boy who was just walking down, eating popcorn, probably didn't even know that she was even disoriented because he just showed up. I don't even remember seeing him recording. And then at this moment, as a white person, she is protected not only by the police, but also the Black community who cared for her and
right.
who were concerned for her.
Who's also concerned for their own lives, because it's
Right,
kind of like there is this random white woman that comes into this area where you don't really see anybody else but African Americans there.
right.
So not only are they, protecting her for her own good, but for their own safety, because they're like, okay, you're
You're
not
right.
even supposed to be here, so we don't want anything going down to where it jeopardizes our lives at the same time.
Right. That makes a good point because it goes back to the fragile white woman trope, or,
Yeah,
I guess the trope. And well, not a trope, it's more of a stereotype that was pushed where, it's this whole emphasis on protecting the white woman, the frail white woman, against these Black beasts, to sort of speak, especially in the early 1900s. And another thing about this particular moment is that it reminds us of the Watermelon Man, the movie, the movie that came out in the 70s. And it was about this white man who wakes up Black.
right. So
And
this was directed by Melvin Van Peebles, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, he directed it. And it was supposed to be a comedy or something, but this was a racist white man. But now he gets to walk the world as a Black man and was subjected to the same discrimination that a Black man would be subjected to.
Right.
And so this was another spin on it where you have a Black woman becoming a white man, a white woman. So it was just an interesting point.
Yeah, it's this whole literally waking up to whiteness,
Right.
like that it's something that is really kind of like scary to think about. Like I don't that's not something that I aspire for. That's not
Right.
something I'm dreaming about. That's not something I would probably be scared out of my mind to wake up, and see that. I mean, we even see in that opening image where she kind of like is looking at her fingers like,
Right. What is this?
what, who is this?
Right.
So,
Because it wasn't her, it wasn't who she was. And it
right.
really goes back to the previous episode where she was talking about, it was at one point where William and her were at the bar, and she
Hmm.
was talking about, being a Black woman, some of the issues, like, it's very competitive and white people don't have their problem. And then showing up with this.
Yeah,
Again, it's similar to Watermelon Man, where he was a bigoted white person before this moment.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
And so, speaking about, white privilege, and I think this is something that we're really talking about a lot more, even especially today, with everything that's been happening, you know, being white at that moment afforded her a luxury, of being able to be respected. This was not something that, Black people really had the luxury of having or being able to say.
right, right,
um it's like, but even in that there was still kind of like a fear, of this, because it wasn't like Ruby was happy per se.
right.
And we'll dive into that a little bit more as far as like how really complex, this taking on whiteness really is. It's not that easy
Right.
as one might think.
And like you said, we will be talking about it later because it's about, well, what does that mean to her?
Hmm.
What is this special? And I
Right.
think we also talked about the price that comes with this potion.
Yes.
And you remember he laid it when she first came back and realized, what was going on. He laid the potion down with money,
Not even a couple of dollars. We talking about a stack of money.
money, like, and it really speaks to this, the price of it. And I know you talked about before about similar to sex workers.
Right. Hmm. And so
Because
we're seeing that intertwine in there. So there's this kind of like, I'm going to give you this potion and I'm going to leave you a little money because you might need this, or like to pay for your troubles almost. And as I remember seeing that scene and it zoom in on the potion and on the money, and it was like, why you had to leave the money? Like, what was that for? And so there's, it can be implied. There's a lot of things that we can imply about it. Like I said, for me, first thing I'm thinking of is like, oh, it's sex work.
right,
So, and this whole putting a currency, putting a price on everything. It's like nothing come, but in the case for Ruby, it's not that she's getting it for free, but it's like, let me give you this because maybe you need it, you
Right.
know, or let me pay for your services, so to speak.
But
So
then back and pretty much uses her later.
right, right. So it's not
Right.
like it's not like you just getting this just because I want to give you this potion. No,
Right.
no.
Of course, there's a purpose behind it, but you don't know right now. So take the money and take the potion,
Yeah,
And then even this conversation on magic,
right,
like magic, and he says, magic exists. Are you scared?
right. And
And
her response is, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because at this point, Ruben hasn't really experienced that magic that everyone else has experienced.
Exactly, exactly. Because
Because
this is our first encounter with magic. We
right,
obviously seen it, from the previous episodes, but
mhm,
now Ruby is able to, I guess one could say benefit from, this magic. So
mhm. That's
yeah.
so
And even in that, William at the same time when he's telling about how magic exists and
mhm,
asking her if she's scared, he also says, you're special enough, why not you?
mhm.
And it's actually a very valid question because, like, I think we as Black folks, in particular, like Black women, we work so hard, and sometimes we do doubt our power and who and
Right,
what our worth is. Like we
mhm.
have to remind ourselves that we have something that other people don't have. We can make moves. We change things. You
Right.
know. So why can't we think we're special? So
Exactly. You're right. I'm glad that you brought that up with William because it does speak to that very point of us identifying our own power, our own magic, our own work as
yeah.
being powerful. So yes, I absolutely agree with that. And
So. Mhm.
you go ahead.
Oh no, no. I was going to transition to our next thought on transformation and metamorphosis.
Yes, that's good. Let's go right into it because I was actually going to speak to that.
Go
So,
ahead. What do you start? Go ahead.
well, I want to because even in the magic, I guess I'm gonna go back to her skin, the whole manifestation of her skin, right?
Right.
And us not acknowledging our power. She didn't really acknowledge her power until she transformed.
Yep. Yep.
So one thing that happens in this particular show, she this metamorphosis is truly like a caterpillar coming into a butterfly. Like it's a true metamorphosis. It's a
Hmm.
true transformation. And it's almost like an enlightenment for her. So
Yeah.
she has this, she's white at this point, right? We wake up, well, not we, but she wakes up white. But
Hmm.
this transformation into blackness is painful. It is something that hurts her. When she becomes white, there's no pain.
Yes.
But when it goes in reverse, it's painful. Like it's coming off of her, and you just hear it. You see how it just comes because it's not a beautiful transformation. And we never see her become white, as though it didn't matter. It was about what does this shedding mean?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
to some degree, this metamorphosis to white was like becoming a butterfly, and then this metamorphosis to black is like reversing and becoming a caterpillar and
Right.
peeling off, all these things. And again, it wasn't until she became white that she even realized her own power as a black woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's multiple layers to this, I guess, when we talk about this unveiling or not unveiling, this transformation.
Right. But still, in the fact that even in what was supposed to be seen as something great happening for us, speaking Black women and particularly Ruby, like you said, there's a pain that is attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't get what I want without having to endure some type of pain.
Right,
And
right.
so, which is like even then we're not winning, you know.
When
And so
even
I still have to go through a level of pain in order to achieve what I want. Like it doesn't, I can't, not saying that life has to be easy, but at least it could be less painful. At least it could, I don't have to shed
right,
skin in a very visceral, way, in order to come back to who I am. So
right, right. And one thing that she did in the she was her first full day as wanting to be this white person named Hillary. After
yes.
that day, she was in a tub and she was singing the song by George Harrison between the devil and the deep blue sea. And what I question, especially in regards to this metamorphosis and the pain of it, of becoming black again,
Mm-hmm.
it was, well, who's the devil
Right.
and who's the deep blue sea? Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, being black is a great experience. And yet, when she became white, she was able to achieve a social status that she was not able to achieve before. She was able to walk around, she would talk about in the stick about being uninterrupted, just being without having any problems or, being accosted for being black.
Right.
But yet, being black is wonderful. And she really enjoyed her culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really made me question when she was singing the song, who's the devil? Is she saying being white was the devil? Or was she saying, being black is the devil, or being betwixt and between,
Right.
loving both and don't really know which one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very interesting.
It's in that moment, like I said, I think I was so this episode really drew me in on how we're able to put on whiteness.
Yes.
You know, it's this, here we're seeing the mask is of whiteness, not
Mhm.
necessarily how people are trying to become black per se.
Right.
Because
Right.
in other situations, we're always talking about people who want to be black, or want to take on black like qualities. But here we're like making that shift of like, I'm wanting to be white. I'm wanting to have the privilege of whiteness. And
Mhm.
even then, she still doesn't have the full privilege when you think about it. I mean, granted, yes, she's able to have, you know, the appearance, and
Right.
she's able to reflect that to other people, but inside she still knows who she is. So it's not like she really still has the total complete package of freedom.
Right.
It's kind of like a very surface level type of freedom.
So it's performative.
Yes, yes.
And you know how for us to navigate the world ourselves, we have to perform whiteness.
Right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that isn't, that speaks of that as well, where it's like, what about this performing of whiteness and how you have to shed yourself just to be accepted?
Right, right,
And,
right.
you
The way
know,
we have to,
on
yeah, performance I think is the ideal word, that we have to put our show on for
yeah,
our audiences so
right,
that they can, where it's this kind of uh intellectual or psychological sing and dance thing that we're doing.
yeah, it really is. And then see how when she came back and she was in the tub, even relaxing, where you can't really relax until you're able to become yourself again.
Right, right.
Because sometimes I guess even when we think about it again, not necessarily think, but I guess we think. But you see how becoming white takes so much of her.
Yeah.
It takes her energy, and
Yep.
that's why even it was a part that was part of her pain when she tried to revert back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I did all this all day, and now I'm shedding it, and now I'm back to myself.
Right.
Absolutely,
Woo.
that was
So
very.
you mentioned something earlier, or touched upon, that I think we need to revisit this idea of being interrupted or
Mhm.
uninterrupted in the case of Hillary. And once again, somebody need to make a T-shirt for that. Maybe we'll make a T-shirt for that. Black girl, black woman interrupted, and it's or uninterrupted rather.
Yeah.
And it was just that moment where we know Lovecraft Country takes place in many places, particularly Chicago. But I just got to point out that scene, even though it's supposed to be Chicago, that was Broad Street of Atlanta, Georgia, over near Georgia State, downtown Atlanta. And I remember watching that and being like, I know that. Like, I used to go get food.
Look, that's Broad Street. I said, what? And I remember staring like, yes, that's home. That's home. Yes.
So yeah, as we see her walking, and they actually keep the name Broad Street, as you see her, and everything kind of behind her is like faded, it's like just a focused on her. And we see her going into the ice cream shop. We see her happy and smiling, at a moment where nobody's trying to disturb her, or the police are making sure she can cross the street without someone hitting her. These are all moments that I don't think about when I'm crossing the street. I'm usually always like, okay, let me make sure somebody's not hitting me, that somebody's
Right.
run up on me. I don't have that luxury to be in just kind of like freeing, this freeing moment of like, it's a beautiful day. I tell myself that, but there's also still parts of me that are like, still in fear of what could potentially, happen to me.
That's that interruption, that fear, and the expectation something could happen. Sometimes it does.
Hmm.
That, and when you see Hillary, she's able to navigate the world in such a way like the world belongs to her.
Yeah. Hmm.
And when you see Black people navigating the world, it's like the world's operating against. Just
Yep.
like the boy, he was just eating popcorn
Right.
and just wanted to just enjoy his walk down the sidewalk, but
Exactly.
yet it was interrupted.
Yep. And so as we kind of talked before, we're not allowed to just simply exist. We don't get a chance to do that. That's not afforded to us, you
Right.
know. So
It's
then
not.
it goes into a question that Christina asks, Ruby, who are you uninterrupted? And there's another line that comes also there, but that just taking that question, who are you uninterrupted? And maybe that's a question I need to even ask myself every day. Who are you uninterrupted?
Right.
What do you get to do? What gets to happen? What story gets to be told?
Mhm.
'Cause and then for her, a white woman to ask her that was really interesting because it's like, well, you already know this.
Right.
So, interesting how you want to know how I feel about being uninterrupted. So
That is important because that's something like you say we do have to evaluate. I was hoping you were not asking me that question because I would not have an answer. 'Cause I was like, oh, but it would be something to figure out. Well, who are we uninterrupted?
mhm,
Now, when we're at home by ourselves in our safe place, then there's some uninterruption there. You're like, okay, I'm in my safe space. But when you are outside and you're walking down the street, even if no one stops you or no one interrupts you physically, mentally you're always aware of this possible interruption.
yeah,
So, what does that mean if I decided to just walk down the street and not be concerned about anything because I
right,
know the world will stop for me and make sure that I'm good?
yep.
What does that mean, and what does that look like?
How does that feel? Yeah.
That feel like? I don't. I mean, so that would be a good question to ask.
Hmm. So maybe I'll ask you that again. Maybe at the end of the episode, I'll ask you again, and maybe you might have an answer for
Then
me.
next episode, ask me. That's gonna take some time. Okay.
I get you. I get you. So in that same, kind of thought, they're having this conversation, and Christina makes another statement. So, at first I'm like, okay, Christina, good question. Yes, who are you uninterrupted? Thank you. Okay, maybe we can have a good dialogue here. But then she says something that just takes a very sharp turn, where
Here we
she
go.
says, we want to be you, you want to be us. And I say, you know what, Christina, see, if there was a moment where you almost could have been like, we could have been maybe associates, because I'm not even gonna give you the benefit of friends,
I
but
know.
associates, you just lost it right there.
Yeah.
Audacity to say, okay, yes, you're right about we want to be you. You got that right. Yep. But that we, as in Black folks, want to be you. No,
No.
you don't get to say that.
No. No.
Say that
We
and
just want our rights. We want our rights just like you have yours. We just want to be treated equally. We want to be us. I mean, we
we
never.
yeah,
That's not the issue at hand. Like, no, we like us, including we'll talk about that in 2 seconds. You want to be like us. You like our culture.
yeah,
You want to understand us. You want to be us because of our greatness, Christina. Thanks, though. But we don't want you. We want to be uninterrupted.
right. And I remember having a very knee jerk reaction after hearing that, watching it, and like, whoa, what? No, ma'am, no, no.
Got the wrong messaging here. Sorry.
And I think the writers probably did that on purpose. Like they knew what they were doing, inserting that line. That was a very intentional
Very,
statement that they were trying to make right there.
very intentional. Do you understand? Like, no, just can we just get equality? Can we not be interrupted today? Is it possible? Is it possible for us to walk the world as though the world is our oyster? Is it possible to, walk through these things and have everyone protect us? That's
Right.
what we want. We want our right, our
Yeah.
equality, you know, our experience to be. It's not necessarily about being the same. It's just about being acknowledged and recognized and respected.
Yeah.
So
So, all right. So with that, when we're thinking about being uninterrupted, at the same time, we have to talk about, get really into the specific experiences of being Black. What does that mean? And, how there is this constant voyeuristic, white voyeuristic um, moment that's always, really happening, whether it's wanting to touch my hair, or whether it's like, how do you look like that, or um as in the case of what we're going to with this scene, this idea of wanting to go down to the South Side and go
Mhm.
to a Black club, like it's a safari, as they called it.
Right. It's like
Yeah,
you're coming in as tourists. And
yeah,
it's like you're coming in as tourists to a Black space. You're interrupting.
yeah, yeah.
You're interrupting. You're so used to interrupting that you don't understand what it means to truly be uninterrupted.
Right.
So, even in that moment where, what was it? They were in the back room, the co-workers of the particular clothing or
And
department
Marshall
store,
Fields.
the
And
Marshall Field, that's what it was, Marshall Field. And they were having these conversations about Black people and wanting to go down to the South Side and go dancing because Ruby slash Hillary at the time was dancing in a certain way, and they were
yes.
like, oh, you they used was it that moment where they used the N word, or was it, no, it wasn't actually, that was
No,
when they were like, you dancing Black.
yeah, yeah.
And then a little while later, they were like, we want to go to the South Side. We want to go and dance with them. And have you been, Hillary? Was
Right.
it scary?
Like, really scary? But you just called it a safari. You just called it this, wanting to go on this exotic experience. But was it scary? Really? That's what we're doing? But you want to go though.
You
But
really
yet you're asking, is it scary? You know,
exactly.
oh, I just, and it's
And
funny,
then after the Black coworker,
right? You're like, really? Like this what you, but the Black coworker wasn't there. That's the thing. So they're having this conversation without her even there. It's more like we're talking amongst ourselves, or who they think, because they don't realize that Hillary is really not Hillary,
mhm.
you know. So I'm just like, as someone who's gone on a safari, I'm like, no, man, this is far from that. This is nowhere near that.
Right.
Nowhere near.
You need to get out of this trope of us as animals and something to be seen, this voyeuristic culture. We are not animals. We are
Right,
not, things to be touched and exotified and, hey, I want to go see Black people. This is
right.
not, we're people. We're humans.
We're not.
So, right, exactly. And it was just very interesting because it was one time, I think you mentioned it, where she they called them another word and then they said, okay, well, Negro,
Oh yeah, so it was she ends up using Negro, and she was like, well, I'm just using the more civilized word, and you're like, that's more civilized. Oh, okay.
the best you can do. Yet again, you're gonna use the meaning word and then come visit our culture.
Right. Okay, this is what it was. It was, they said Negro, and then she used colored, and she figured colored was more civilized. Neither it works. Neither neither works.
Just don't. How about that? Just don't. That works.
No,
And
yeah.
no, you're good.
Oh, so yeah, so we get to the South Side. We get to, the great Denmark VC's bar. And we got the co-workers there, and they're like feeling like so happy. Oh my God, we're on the South Side. Look at all those people dancing. Oh, look at that. And you could even see the reaction from the Black patrons, like,
Why are you
okay,
people?
what are you doing here? Like, you don't come here. Like, this is not your space. We at that moment, that's when you see us become territorial. Like, we're like, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. Why are you here? Mm-mm. You know. Um,
And I feel bad for the woman, the coworker, because the coworker was caught between a rock and a hard place. She
yeah,
could not say no, and she knew she didn't want to bring them, but it happened regardless.
exactly.
So I felt bad for her because she didn't know what to do. She had to bring them because she knew it would jeopardize her position at this place. And,
Yeah,
you know, so she had to be there. And then I think they wanted to dance. Then they were
right.
like, we're gonna go and dance, teach me how to dance. And it's like, again, um, the famous, I guess, famous phrase or statement of you want our rhythm but do not want our blues.
Right.
So
Right.
you coming in, you know, having fun with our culture after first talking about it, and you
Yes.
go on safari. So you're dancing with us now because you love our music and you love our dances, but you don't respect us as people.
Right. So
Like,
we're still less than. We're
right,
even in this exotic safari like experience, we are dehumanized. You know,
exactly,
we're not, we're just less than. And it's kind of like, you're just here because we needed to get here. And that's really how
exactly.
they used it. It was not about like, oh, we want to hang out with you. No, we need you because otherwise, because they wouldn't have came there any other way. There
No,
was no way.
it was they treated like you said like a safari. I want to see how they act.
Right.
I want to see what are they doing down there.
Like,
And
shoot us.
yes, show us. Oh my God, we have to dance. Dance with us. Teach us. And again, it goes again. That's safariism. You know, you looking and or voyeurism. You looking at us, and then you love our culture, but you are talking about us as though we are other, like we're another form of a human, or if we were human. It was the way in which they articulate that. It was a dehumanization of blackness.
Yes.
It was like you are to be seen. I want to see what you do. I'm very interested.
Right.
It was a very interesting scene.
Ooh, so in that, there's the trauma. So we gotta let's move to that, because this is also another moment that we see, that where we shift a little bit, and yeah, and this is kind of like that scene where, as we've talked before, this is where we go from like Atticus, we understood what was going on, to like, really, Atticus, though,
Really,
like,
Atticus.
like, I mean, I get what you're doing, I get your pain, but that's what we're gonna do, though. So
That was unnecessary.
yeah.
I just want to throw it out there. Like, okay, so the scene that we're speaking of, at this point, you know, we're transitioning from the last episode, and in this one, Yahima,
Yes.
she is killed by Montrose, as we know from the last one,
Right.
and Montrose is sitting in a chair just reading something, just just sitting here,
He's in
and
his.
Atticus, right, and Atticus was coming in with Letty, and they're like, "Where's Yahima?" And Atticus looks at Montrose. Atticus beats Montrose.
Before that, it was almost like there was this a nonverbal connection that happens, where he looks at him, and Montrose kind of has this look of like, yeah, she without saying it, she ain't here.
Right.
you know and Letty reacts in the way of like, huh? And Atticus goes like that, it
0 to 100. And it was as though, because again, Montrose did not want him to pursue that line to protect him. But everything from Atticus's past came back at that moment.
mm-hmm.
And he proceeds to physically beat Montrose.
Yeah.
Montrose did not fight back. It was as though he was like, okay. And this was very interesting because that night before in the previous episode, he was like, great father. He was like, I love you, son. They had this nice thing in the hallway. And it seems as though after that moment, now that I'm looking back on it, it's crazy. After having that moment and then killing Yahima, it was like, I need this moment to even help me feel more confident in what I'm going to do.
Right.
I want to protect you, son. So I
Yeah.
have to do this to Yahima. Now again, we need to explore why did that happen that way. We'll talk about that another time again. But then in this episode, he's like, I'm just gonna let you hit me. But it
And
was a
a
brutal beat.
breaking point. It was like a breaking point for Atticus, that, because clearly this was a result of lots of stuff that was pent up over years, not just through what we have seen transpire through these episodes, but just through his whole childhood. That was a result of that. What we
Yeah,
saw, what happened there, that beat down, that wasn't just, from that trip that they took to Boston. That wasn't from finding, Montrose, in Arkham. This was, years and years of pent up repression that was just like exploded.
right, right. Because whether he beat by Montrose growing up, he was
Yes.
so then again that was part of that trauma. And
Yeah.
that anger that he developed that anger over time. He really got it from his father. And then, you know, even when Letty, first of all, Letty had to call people to help get him off of his father.
Right. I mean, because she couldn't even begin to even get him off of his dad, rather, excuse me. Like there was no way that she could have even remotely tried. It
Right.
would have been a failed effort. A failed effort.
I mean,
She
it was
might
just,
have would have gotten hurt herself.
she, yes, that's when even when she went down and he ran away and he was like, I'm looking for pictures of the book of Adam.
Yes, yes.
He said, or I can't quite remember. Yes, it's the book of Adam. And she was like, did you take pictures of him? And he was just frantically in the basement because apparently he got down there very quickly. And
Yeah.
then, what was her name? Letty was like, Atticus, calm down. And then he got attitude with her, and she stood in the doorway. But we found out, she was like, but you know, then we found out later she had a bat. That's how he was able to stand. Like,
I love the camera work because it was like she was literally breathing like really hard, like I'm gonna face you. I'm gonna stand up to you. You know, whatever. I'm gonna do this. Like, because it was almost that moment of like, you're not gonna hurt me. Like, I'm scared out of my life, but you ain't gonna hurt me. And you know, so you see this moment between the two of them where like they're just like no words, just and then he finally just storms up off the up the stairs, and then you see this kind of like paneling to the bat, and you're like, oh,
right.
oh, oh, okay.
But
we,
she was ready. That
yeah,
was just like the camera angles were great with that.
that I was like, I see you right there.
Right. And one thing I do like about this show is that it does really speaks to the trauma
Yeah,
that you know people endure. And he does need counseling. The way he beat his father, and the fact is that Letty is scared of him.
yeah,
How that trauma then goes beyond his father to this potential love interest, or this not potential, but his love interest. Now she's scared of him.
right. Like there, and she's kind of caught in like loving him, but being scared of him at the same time. You know, it's what we see often sometimes in abusive relationships,
Right.
where there's like, you know, you love someone, but you're also scared because you don't know what might happen. And so, you know, with her, he's never hit her. So, you know, in this situation, it's not like she's being abused by Atticus, but she's just seeing the aftermath of everything of how he has, you know, beats and abused others, that she's like, I don't know what you're capable of, and how that could impact me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so that brings up a good point, even on that line. I want to make it real quick, where you know, love shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't be fearful in that way of love.
Right.
And to me, that was a red flag. That is a red flag in regards to an abusive relationship. You see how it was hard to get him off his father,
Yeah.
and he still has that trauma. Yes, Letty did not beat him or anything like that, but you saw the aggression he had toward her, and if she did not have that back,
Yep.
I don't know if he would hit her,
I don't even
but
want to think. I don't even want to think of what would have happened in that moment.
right. Don't,
You know,
but
I want to keep some sense of who Atticus is, you know, and tries to be, you know, I don't even want to think what he would do,
right, right.
you know.
Um, I think he should get counseling. That should have been a part of the episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think the whole family need to actually, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. That's just a all around observation.
Right, right, right. And I really appreciate the honest and the vulnerability of that, of seeing that, of really saying this is what trauma does. You know,
Yeah.
it's a real and true depiction of what happened, you know, and how it's created.
Right. And that it's not short term, like it can linger, and
Mhm.
it can carry on through generations, you know, when it's all said and done.
And,
Um,
and side
yeah.
note, one thing, it
What's that?
reminds me of the color purple.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's
It's
a good
just like
point.
the color purple, where first of all, Walker does a great job showing how this trauma is passed down through generations. You know,
Yes.
we see the father of Mister, and you see Mister. It's like, oh, that's why we see the father, because
Right.
we see how Mister became who he is because the father,
Yep.
the
Yep.
culture. So yeah, I just want to put it out there because I love the paper.
That's good. I'm glad you pointed that out. That's good.
Mhm.
Woo. Yeah. So we also, you mentioned this, and as we kind of start out the episode introduction, that so we focus on Ruby in this
Mhm.
episode, and we're also focusing on the development of us as audience viewers of who Montrose really is, and tapping into his queerness. It's kind of alluded and assumed and implied in different times, leading up to it, but here we actually see it in its full in its fullness. Like there is no more questioning it at all. It is real. And um, it's interesting to note that this particular episode was directed by Cheryl Dunye, who is known for centering um, her films and two TV episodes around race, sexuality, and gender, specifically the work of Black lesbian women. And so her most notable work is The Watermelon Woman. She's directed episodes of Claws, Queen Sugar, All Rise, David Makes Man, The Shy, and much more. And if you see her work, like her work is very evident. Having seen all of the episodes that I've mentioned as far as what she's done, I know I'm like, Cheryl Dunye directed that. I can see it. I can, she has a stamp, she has a mark that is very clear. So, and I think it was great that she was the one who directed, because she did it perfectly. She really was able to show the picture of not only Ruby's, transformation into, bringing on whiteness, but also this queerness
Mhm.
of Montrose. We really, I feel like they did a really good job of providing that depiction of him.
And really showing this this type of black experience, this black queer experience, in this experience, especially during that time period, where
Right.
if you were queer, then you were hidden or you had to hide.
Yep.
And one thing that was very interesting was how again Atticus beat him like
Yep.
really bad, and then he goes to Cabrini Green, and then was able to first of all Cabrini Green, Candyman. I know I'm not from Chicago. That's what I think of Cabrini Green. But okay, so when he goes to this to Cabrini Green, then he engages in sex with an aggressive form of sex, very emotional form of sex
Right.
with this with another man, and it's like, oh, so now we actually see his queerness, but
Yep.
we see it because he was beaten
Right.
again. I just want to go back to him being beat, but he was at his most vulnerable point
Yeah.
where he couldn't hide anymore. He didn't want to hide, like it just, or I guess he was still kind of hiding, but not really. It was just like at his most vulnerable, he stripped himself, like Ruby, was
Yeah.
vulnerable. He stripped himself of this layer because you know the way Atticus came at him, it was just like very. I guess to me that was dehumanizing the way he was beaten. Again, it really is hard. I hate to go back to it to really truly blame Atticus because again, it's about the trauma.
Hmm.
Um, Yet we also see how that beating kind of took out the layer of Montrose at this moment, and we see his queerness as he goes to Cabrini Green.
And that, just that scene, there's just so many layers. So the fact that, like you said, he goes to Cabrini Green housing projects, which, for, if you all know, the Cabrini Green housing project has been, important. They're no longer there, but it's an actual housing project that was in Chicago. It was notorious for crime, for just poverty, impoverishment, all of that. And then you have this aggressive, emotional, intimate scene between Montrose and his lover, who he's had a very long-term relationship with, because he even says to him, oh, he beat you, like, so he's seen this before.
Mhm.
And so you can see how Montrose kind of comes here when he needs a certain level of reprieve, when he needs to release, you
When he
know.
needs a safe space, he needs a place to be safe where he can be himself authentically, and he doesn't have to hide or he doesn't have to be who others want him to be. Oh, almost aligning again with Ruby.
Exactly, exactly. So then at the same time, which, as we have said many times before, Lovecraft nails it when it comes to the music. You have Frank Ocean's Bad Religion playing in the background, and it's just like they nailed it. They did it. I mean, it just works. And so, and this is the scene is also an opportunity for us to engage in another form of Black masculinity that we often it's brought up, but we really don't get to dive into it deep.
Right,
And
right,
I feel like this show in general and this episode really gave us a good up close and personal look at how Black masculinity can look in different come in different forms.
right,
It's
right,
it's not just monolithic. It's not vanilla. you
right.
know. So,
Exactly. And this is actually, and as we talk about in later episodes, this is the first time where we are introduced to him, but it becomes more developed as we goes on. And so I do agree with that, where we do see this different viewpoint of Black masculinity. We start to break down the stereotypes of what Black masculinity is,
right.
and we acknowledge its multiplicity.
Yep.
So yeah, I do agree with that.
And a beautiful experience was the Black drag queen experience. I mean, it was. Ooh, I mean, I was enthralled. I was just kind of like, it was beautiful. You see, the sassy Sarah Vaughan, you see, all these different things happening. So a lot of stuff is happening. You have the jazz singers, you have the kind of like what appeared to be some type of competition that took place. And then you see Montrose kind of just like in the moment, he's just dancing, and he's free, and then they lift him up and raise him up, and then bring him back down. It was such a beautiful moment that took place, where it was like everything was on pause.
Everything was.
Soak up all of this right here,
And it goes back to how that scene unfolded. So he at first he was laying against the pole, against the pillar,
Yeah.
and then his lover extends, his hand, her hand. I think was it his hand,
Right.
and he pulls Montrose, and Montrose comes out, and it just free.
Yeah.
It's like, thank you, I needed. Thank you for being the entrance into the world that I needed. Thank
Yes.
you for being this liaison. Um,
Hmm.
and so you see him dance with his lover, just going around. And first of all, Michael K. Williams played the mess out of that role. Okay, like I believed him. I saw the freedom in his, expression, and so I just had to make sure I acknowledge him. But yeah, we do see this freeing moment happen as he's dancing. The music it slows down, speeds up. It's just a beautiful scene. It's a beautiful scene.
It really is. And I think we needed that,
Yeah.
considering everything that had been happening. And we
Mhm.
actually need that, considering what happens after.
Right.
Because we needed a beautiful moment, because we end in an ugly moment, unfortunately, with this episode. This is where we get to the what I like to call the breaking points and the moments of clarity in the episode. You
Yeah.
know, um, and I'm just going to just dive right into it. The stiletto, Ruby and the stiletto.
Yeah. I
I
don't
mean,
know the detail of that particular point, but we just know that a stiletto was real.
yeah,
Okay.
it just, ooh, so like I said, breaking point, moments of clarity. And so we finally see, so we come back to this. So there's, we've, seen some earlier scenes. We see about Montrose, Atticus, Letty, and they're going through what they're going through. We have the Black drag queen experience. And then we come back to, Marshall Fields. We come back to this moment of, okay, I'm fed up, I'm tired. This is what's going to happen. Because in an earlier moment, we see the white store manager, trying to assault and rape the Black co-worker. So, and Ruby has seen this. So she's like, oh, I'm gonna remember that. And this is where we get to the stiletto. We get to her basically following up on this attempted rape of the Black co-worker at her job. And there's a moment where it just another visceral reaction. It was, we were both reading an interview how when they were taping it, how it was hard for her to have to channel into that moment. I can only imagine what you have to even do to channel that moment. Cause yeah, I don't ever want to think about stilettos like that again.
Never, ever. But one thing I will say, that was one time where she used her whiteness as a weapon.
Yeah.
and as a weapon of protection, because she knew that even though it was this one moment where he tried to go with this black woman, first of all, he was going to fire her
Right.
and find other ways of hurting this black woman. So she put on her whiteness to even protect
Yep.
this black woman, and then even becoming black herself, where she allowed him to see the transformation and
Mm.
scar him. It's like, look at this,
Yep.
look at this. This is you.
Yep.
And I
Woo.
remember you explained to me what the stiletto was.
Like, so I mean, it's also named after, the stiletto dagger. So if you see that moment of how she is sodomizing this man, like, you're like, oh, I get the whole dagger. I see it. I get it, and
Right.
it had this initial wave in the 1950s. This show takes place in the 1950s. So it's like, it was really weird how, they use that particular article of clothing, which has also been seen as a very seductive, erotic, form of clothing, in this moment. So, whoo,
Yeah.
it was rough. It's not for kids, not for
Mhm.
kids at all. Mm-mm.
I don't really know if there was an episode for kids.
No, and the episode in general just is not for
Yeah,
kids.
no, just leave the episode alone. Just tell your kids about life.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was a huge breakthrough moment for her. It was a freeing moment because she was
yeah,
like, I don't have to lie anymore.
right,
This is who I am, and you're going to see this transformation.
yep,
Enjoy your time.
right. And you're
And
gonna see that a colored girl. She made sure to say, you're gonna see that a colored girl did this to you.
yes, and he and that what was even so, I guess, amazing. I mean, I guess in the evil way was how he can't even say anything about it.
Yeah.
Who did this to you?
Right. Like, there's no way that, because that would bring embarrassment on him. And then people would be like, you let this happen to you? About
Right.
like, so he can't even say anything
And how
because
you going to explain magic?
yeah,
She was white. This became black. Like,
right. Nope. So you just better off just not saying anything.
exactly. She won. And so I really like that. And there were like, we did talk about already of Atticus and Montrose, that as a breakthrough moment for Atticus for beating his father,
Yep.
and even this breakthrough moment for Montrose and becoming free
Right.
without, being so concerned about the imaging. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate this whole idea of, breakthroughs and the
Yes.
enlightenment and what it means for all these characters. And also the moment where we see Letty reading the Bible.
Right. So we
And
see the moments of faith again.
yeah, it just comes right back. And again, we tend to see it mainly with Letty at
Right.
this point,
Hmm.
But it really talks about the importance of faith to Black people,
Right.
and the importance of spirituality and how it is an important part of who we are.
Yep.
And it is never forgotten in any of the episodes.
Right.
But we'll
Right.
talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah. Then we see rage, how it comes in different forms. We see how Ruby embodies that rage and how it's then put out afterwards. And I just really appreciated that this episode got to highlight Ruby, because we hadn't got a chance to really see Ruby. We didn't really get a chance to know her. We see her through Letty, but we get to actually, like, this is Ruby telling Ruby's story from Ruby's point of view. And I really and I like how the series does that, where they have moments where we get to focus on certain characters. And it was Ruby's time. It was time for her to shine. It was time for her to get into that in that spotlight. So
Exactly.
yeah. So yeah, we got it. So we'll end with this moment with episode 5 before we go jump into episode 6. That ending moment where Ruby's at the house and she sees, you know there's just so much going on already. And this moment of seeing William coming into the house and transforming into Christina, and shedding of this male body, and seeing Christina come up, and you're like, and I remember, because that's the last moment
The last
that
moment.
we see. And I remember when we watched it, we were like, what just happened?
Right. So Rupert was like that too.
You're literally like, wait a minute, pause, hold on, wait, rewind, go back, wait a minute, what just happened here? Because now my mind is thinking about all kind of stuff. So Was that Christina the whole time? So was Ruby and Christina together, or was it Ruby and William together? I mean, there's everything is happening so fast, and that's all you can think about, because after that we go into the next episode.
Right.
And,
It's like on Lovecraft. Like, are you serious? Address this. But Ruby did with her question. She addressed it with her question.
she did.
She did a great job. She said, "Were you William the whole time?" That was her question. She wasn't concerned about anything else. She didn't care about whatever he transformed. He was like, "Are you serious right now?"
And and the showrunners, the writers, the creators of Lovecraft Country, they're so wrong, because they ended with that, and then we jump into a whole nother episode, whole nother, we don't even stay in Chicago.
We don't even go back to that. It was like, done. Deal with it the way you need to.
It was like this abrupt cut, like, and cut.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna go over here now. Wait a minute. Wait.
Give us an extra minute, just 1 minute. If we can get 60 seconds, we'll be okay. We just need to sum it up.
You can't do that to me. No. So,
oh my God, that was excellent.
So speaking of that, so let's go ahead and move into episode 6, because they didn't give us a chance to grasp episode 5. They said you're gonna have to figure that out later, and they actually, what you will later see, because episode 7 doesn't get there either. We don't get back to that until later. So I feel like maybe episode 9.
Maybe episode 9.
So
no, we don't. We don't get back to it to episode 10.
Yeah. So you're kind of left like, So yes, episode 6, Meet Me in Daegu. So here like I said, we transition to a whole nother hemisphere, a whole nother country. One could even say we are taking an extended flashback, because we actually kind of go back, in time, so to speak, before what is transpiring in this current moment of the show. And also should note, for those if you do read the book, the Meet Me in Daegu, don't look for it in the book. Just, spoiler alert, don't look for it, because it's not there. And this is where we see the creators kind of take a little bit of liberty, with deviating from the book and deviating from the script. But we're still seeing magic, playing out. Now we're just seeing it in a different country. So Daegu is in South Korea. So we are also, we meet a new character. Her name is Gia. And I like to call her, she's a new friend. Because, and you'll understand why we mean that, later in later episodes.
You're right, because I would think about, I guess you're right, because now, like, new friend?
Yeah. So I know new friend. What you mean, new friend? Yeah. She's a new friend. She's a new friend.
Eventually.
Yeah. So like I said, Daegu, South Korea is where this is, taking place. We're seeing Atticus as he's serving in the military in 1950. So here we are seeing, we always saw him in his uniform, but now we're seeing him actually, in the army, in the military, in active duty. And it's wartime. And I think, when I watch wartime movies, there's always kind of like an uneasiness, because it's never good. It's very little happiness. There's a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of, evil. There's just so much that goes on. And this show definitely takes on that. It definitely looks at that from the Korean War. Is this the Korean War that's happening? Yeah, I think, right? Yeah. Because not Vietnam.
No, it's not Vietnam.
And then I just have to point out, if nobody ever says it again, the nursing field, like, they don't get enough credit. They don't get enough respect. After watching this episode, you really see how they heal mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically. They do a lot in these treacherous times that they have to deal with. It's not like they're at a hospital like Grady or at Bon Secours here in Richmond. Like, this is, war. Like, tense.
Yes. these people are with people at their worst.
Yes.
And you see how, as they're crying out for help, the soldiers who are hurt or armed or whatever, how they're crying out for help. These are the nurses who are there with them. Like, okay, we're here with you to help you as much as we can, even as you're here to protect us and do whatever. And even though some of the protection, which we'll address later, is kind of nuanced, but we're here with you.
Right.
And even on some of them who die, like they're with their last breath. So again, you think about nurses, and sometimes they don't get the credit they deserve, even here.
Right.
We talk about in the midst of the pandemic, they deserve a lot of credit because they're there, they're on the front line of this pandemic. So it really does bring back this importance of nursing during
Yeah.
war and as well as now.
Sure. So in that, let's dive into the traditions and the gender roles that are how what talked about in the episode. So in this episode we see, Gia, we're introduced to her through a Judy Garland movie, which we're going to come back to that a
Yeah.
little later, but I'm going to jump ahead to how she has, this very strained relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
um, you
Yeah.
know, Gia is not who we think she is.
Hmm.
There's a, it's a reason why that she is not who we think she really is. And
Right.
and this all is, there's a strain that is not a result of it, but it factors into, who she is or who she really is.
Right.
And looking at the relationship that she has with her mother, you're kind of like, what's really happening? Why is her mother treating her like this? Why is she talking to her this way? Why are they, you know not in a good space? And
Right.
um,
Mhm.
we see that, and that's something that also, um, when she finally does encounter Atticus and they build a relationship, they have something to relate to. The
Right.
strain of relationships between parents, and
Mhm.
what they expect of us and what they want of us and what they try to make us become.
Right, right. Because you do see with Atticus when Montrose trying to control Atticus' fate,
Yep.
just like Gia's mother's trying to control her.
Right. Hmm.
And it does bring up this nuanced motherly love, where
Right.
yes, she wants to protect her, but then we come to find out is it because she wants to protect her or help herself.
Yep. Hmm.
But again, you see this complicated relationship
Right.
where it's like, okay, we know she loves her daughter,
Hmm.
but it's almost too controlling. Like, I want to control your fate. I want to control your life so you can be who I want you to be and be what I want you to be.
Right. And there are some tender moments. Like there's a, definitely have to point out the moment where Gia and her mother are making kimchi, and they have this kind of bonding time as they're creating, like, oh, it's too spicy, no, you need to add more. And you see this like loving little moment, but that's still overshadowed by what the mother wants from her, and why. Because even in that tender moment is like, snatched away when she's like, I need you to do this though. You need to finish what you're supposed to do. you know
Exactly. Exactly.
and so, what is that supposed to do? So Gia is what, is known as a Kumeo. And so we'll tap into the history of Kumeo and what that is. But she was transformed into one to protect her
Right.
from her mother's husband. And so it's folklore. So we're seeing East Asian folklore, coming into to the picture, with this, and which complicates, you know, this mother-daughter relationship,
Yeah.
if you will. So
Because it does speak to the fact that she became this figure because her mother made her do it. She
right.
did not have a voice in that. Her agency was taken away from her. She
Mhm.
became this quote unquote monster, this mythical, I guess not mythical at this point, this monster because of this creature, because her mother
Right.
wanted her to be this.
Hmm.
And over as we see throughout this episode, even toward the end when she's trying to make a decision, which we'll speak of later, she had to get the control back,
Right.
like try and fight to get that control back to the point where she didn't even complete her own mission.
Yep. Hmm.
That is a source of power that she wants to have that was taken away from her at this moment. So
And
we'll talk about becoming human again when we talk about what this means and things like that. But she wanted to be normal. She wanted to be human. She
Yeah.
wants to be human again. She wants to be regular. But her mother took that away from her.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
where was her power in this conversation? And even how she navigated the entire episode, or I guess the world, but the episode, you see her trying to find ways
Right.
to just be herself
To
this
escape
entire time.
who she is, and try to find some sense of normalcy. You know.
Right. Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I like how this idea of becoming human again.
Right.
Because she's not really. You know, and we see the Mudang, or the female shaman. Is who transformed her, who made her into the Kumeo. And
Right.
so, in a way, she's kind of stripped of her humanity, you know, in order to protect her mother, in order to protect her. There's all these different layers of protection, and it gets complicated. It gets tricky about who's really protecting who's really saving who, in this moment. So,
Right.
well, let's actually look into the history of the Kumeo. So, like I said, it's an East Asian folklore. It's kind of like expanding our base of monsters. So we've been talking about monsters all along. So here now we're looking at it from a Japanese Chinese perspective.
Right.
So, the Kumeo in this episode takes on the spirit of a fox with 9 tails.
Hmm.
And actually think of a fox, literally how foxes act, how they hunt, all of that. It's literally that, but just also with 9 tails. In addition, so you have this creature, the spirit that has been taken over by Gia, and so she has become the Kumeo, and so possessing her body. And in order to be released, she has to feed on the souls of 100 men to
Right. Right.
bring back the original Gia. So you want to like bring back 100 men, 100 souls. Yeah, she has to consume them, literally. It's been said that some Korean legends claim that a kumyo is an otherwise normal fox that lives for 1,000 years and
Mhm.
evolves into the 9-tailed monster. And we get to see that actually come to play in the episode. We do see the tails, which some people maybe thought were tentacles, but these were actually tails that were coming out of Gia in each of those moments where she's consuming, the male souls.
Mhm.
And not only does she kill them, but she also absorbs their memories at the
Mhm.
same time as well. So you really see this like a whole nother experience taking place, this whole nother taking over,
Right.
um, a whole other power dynamic,
Mhm.
a shifting power dynamic. And it definitely reminds me of, African spirituality, in the sense that what we saw in like episode 3, where we see in the ancestors coming back, or where they're kind of taking over the house.
Mhm.
In this case, we have this one spirit that's consuming Gia, but there is still a control, a level of magic that is being personified.
Mhm. And I want to add to that where you see how this mythical creature or spiritual creature, how is to it was created to protect her against these men.
Right.
So it speaks to the patriarchy. It was like a spiritual way of fighting against the patriarchy of these men taking control of her life. But
Yeah.
then it also talks about, even if you think of her mother similar to Rachel, like that's why I did becoming human again. And she became this monster because her mother made her become this monster.
Right.
Because her mother thought she knew what was best for this monster.
Yes.
Oh, not for the monster, but for her and her daughter, without giving her a daughter to say so. It reminds me or puts in the same type of conversation with racism as if her mother represents this hierarchy, this racial hierarchy, this racism, and how Black bodies have been a part of this where we are victims of this. Like we are not the problem. We are not the problem, but we became victims of this problem.
Right.
This fabricated creation of racism real,
Mm-hmm.
but we
Mm-hmm.
became victims of it. And then so now, we're fighting back, we're doing all these different things to fight against this racism, to fight against these problems of life. And even though, and at one point she says, Gia says, I will never be her again.
Right.
I will never be your daughter again. It's saying with Black people, it's like, of course we're not angry beings. We're not gonna go back and rebel. But what is it like to not be in a racialized context and to behave uninterrupted.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? Because you want us to be uninterrupted. We don't even know what that means.
Right. Right.
So will we ever go back to, because of course, we were people and we still are people, we've been people. And we had cultures before enslavement in America and in other parts of the world. But can we go to an uninterrupted place?
Exactly.
Can Gia go back to who she was?
Yep.
Can we do that? What does that mean for us?
Right.
So yeah, I
And
just
maybe, the uninterrupted in this moment is survival, being able to survive. You know, maybe it's, this interesting gift that she has, or this clairvoyancy that she has. Maybe that can be that uninterruptedness, that she possesses
right.
as Kumeo. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I learned a little something. I remember watching the episode and being like, what happened? Because we just deviated from what was going on. But I learned something. I definitely learned something, and I definitely see its place in the series. And it's one of those where I tell people, if you get to episode 6, don't give up. Don't give up, because trust me, it connects. I know it seems like it was just thrown in, but it definitely connects. And if nothing else, you know, we learn a lot, and we see how, even though we're in Korea, a lot of the experiences that are happening there Black African Americans can relate,
Yeah.
and do relate to the trauma, to the experiences that are taking place. And one in particular is the idea of escapism, and
Yeah.
in this reacting to trauma. And
Mhm.
how do we navigate through our lives when we're going through something? What do we escape to?
Right.
It's mhm.
And like you said, Atticus, he did that too, escapism with his books. It was
Yep.
a way for him to mentally leave and detach from everything that's going on, as well as, even the trauma he was experiencing. That was his books. What was it, Calamari Cristo, that they talked about in this particular episode? And, you had Gia who wanted to go to the movie.
Exactly.
He wanted to be in this darkness of the movie. And
Yeah,
then later we find out that in order for her to truly be herself, she has to be one with darkness. And we'll see that action in the last episode.
we do. We do.
So that was
And,
great.
so yeah, like you said, Atticus escapes through the books, Gia through the movies. They also speak on this moment of where Gia says, "We've both done monstrous things,
Yeah.
but that doesn't make us monsters." And I think that's a really like deep moment, because people
Mhm.
will make you feel like you're a monster.
Yes.
But unless it's all about, I'm not going to take that. I don't accept that. I don't receive that. And so it's like, yes, maybe I've done some things that may not have been the best, but that doesn't make me this monster that you're trying to make me out to be. So I think
Right.
that was a really deep moment, because both her and Atticus had done some things that were like, I'm wondering about y'all. Y'all have done some questionable stuff, but we can't rule them out, you
But that's
know.
what they did it beyond their control. It wasn't even within their control. They did these monstrous things. Monstrous.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was very good.
So
That
what
connect.
else we got? American Identity and Whiteness. So we talked about how Gia, we first opened in the episode with Gia watching, Meet Me in St. Louis, the very famous Judy Garland American movie. And we see her kind of like fantasizing, dreaming of this like white ideal, like, oh yes, flowers, roses, oh, being another person in another world,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what that means, and how that even still today, that is like the ideal, like, oh, I want to be this person, I want to be that person, other than who they really are. So
Right. But it goes back to even the image of America to others, where people come here and they're like, oh, America is this land of wonder, of dream, of you
yeah,
want to achieve this American dream. So you come here, look at Judy Garland singing this song, just carefree, without any care. Again, I know, keep bringing it up this uninterruptedness. She's
yeah,
just singing, she's just enjoying herself, and you can see her fantasizing, like you said, just singing the song. And of course, in her mind, she didn't do it publicly,
right,
but being able to just see her freedom in that.
right, right. We see then, with that, we see, the US propaganda, all over. I mean, it's wartime. So obviously, it's going to be there, this idea of like, you have nothing to fear. We're here to help you. We're here to save you.
But that
And
was aggressive too, how that happened.
yeah,
Where
'cause-
they're in the theater and it was like shaking. I said, "Oh, it's bombs." They were like, "No, it's just us. We're nothing to fear though. Enjoy your time. We're here to help you. I'm throwing this at your face." It's like by coming here with these big tanks,
right.
you're throwing out paper, yelling at us,
Yeah.
saying that there's nothing to fear.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
We're here to save you. Don't
Oh,
worry. We're going to save you from your own land.
yes,
you know?
yes. Thank
So,
That's what we're here for.
yeah. And so we see the experience of the foreigner. So, G is experiencing, Atticus is experiencing. There's another guy, military guy that's there, from a Japanese, a Black and Korean perspective, all feeling like they're in these foreign lands, in these foreign spaces, that they don't belong,
Mhm.
where they are. And
And then,
how
mhm,
we people it's the Black experience is very similar in different in spaces.
yeah,
We can relate to other cultures, and we're not necessarily alone in that battle or in that fight. So
right. Because I remember what was the scene where he was the Japanese military, Japanese soldier said like he's called this in this context and this in this context, and then Atticus was like, "Oh, I got you too." You
right.
know, look, you're
Play this
called,
game all day.
right? Do you want to play or not? And then Gia was like, "Mm-hmm."
Right.
Korea, but I'm ostracized because I have to keep who I am hidden. So
Right.
then I can't even navigate. I'm a foreigner here because I am not my true self.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah. We also see how lynching, is very much. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter the body. It's still the same. It's still cruel. It's still traumatic.
Mhm.
And it's still dehumanizing,
Right,
regardless. Just because the body changes doesn't mean the message changes.
right, exactly. And you see, because it was a lynching of a communist Korean,
Right.
and it
Right.
was to fight communism. They were against communism, and the U.S. soldiers were standing by,
Watching.
just watching it, smiling. And then I think kind of passively flirting with Gia's best friend at the same time that
Yeah.
this lynching is going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it speaks to, during the early 1900s, how lynchings, well, after the Civil War, lynchings were a part of the American culture. This vigilante justice was even supported by the criminal justice system.
Yep.
So you see how they pretty much was parallel or intertwined. And
Mm-hmm.
it really shows itself again in Korea, where the soldiers who were there to protect us, aggressively protect us, apparently with the tanks,
Right.
did nothing and stood by. So again, even across the world, you see the same thing happening. Where, yeah, we're against communism because we're against communism in the U.S. Because
Right.
you had different black people who were blacklisted because they were communists. Like
Yeah.
you had Paul Robeson, Charlotta Bass, you had Shirley Graham and Du Bois. All these people were blacklisted because they were communists. So U.S. was very anti-communism.
Right.
And so when this happened again with lynching, you see the soldiers saying, it's fine. So it wasn't about human bodies, it was political.
Right.
So when you think about lynching, lynching is not, of course we know lynching is not about supporting the human body, but it's about this humanization of bodies.
Yep.
Um, where you're stripped of your social being, where you're on display for entertainment,
Yep.
where you are at will with anyone else. So your body is entertainment. Your body is to be abused and gawked at. And so, like I said, going back to it, you see this anti-communism that is being circulated and supported by the U.S. via its soldiers as well.
And so it's like this, unfortunately, this man who's lynched, he's seen as like un-American, but it's like he's not even American. Like
Not
he's, that's not who he is. But yet because he's taken on this communist belief, he's seen as un-American, which then, like I said, we look at actual Black folks who were seen as un-American because they either were communists or were seen as progressive capitalists, like you said, you
Right.
know,
Because,
Du Bois and his wife. So it's like, so America's like inserting itself in these other countries when it's like, this ain't America though.
not even about you over here. Like, you're supposed to protect, like, leave them alone, because America, of course, again, this anti-communism thing, and it really is about upholding white supremacy, capitalism, and racial hierarchy. Because we
Right.
even see, like I said, going back to Paul Robeson, and you talk about William Patterson when they had not the 1951 We Charge Genocide petition to the United Nations, and when they came back, of course, the petition failed because the U.S. was like, the war definitely had a part in doing that. And when they came back, blacklisted, and could not speak to foreigners anymore, foreign powers, not foreigners, but foreign powers, could deem communists, blacklisted,
Right.
visas revoked, because they were speaking out against oppression.
Right.
And when you speak out against oppression, what happens?
It ain't good. It's not good.
It's
Either
not.
your life is taken or your life is ruined. So I don't know what's worse, you know.
No, no.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so we, just this whole, communism becomes a discussion here. This idea of going to war. So if we think about, the military and war for the Black, for Black men in particular, like you said, they're fighting two wars, one at home, one abroad. So they don't even know where they fit in either one. Atticus has to literally escape to war so that he can find some sense of freedom, some sense of liberation from primarily his father. We see how fear really dominates throughout this episode, whether it's fear of the soldiers, fear of Gia as a Kumeo, fear of her mother, fear of what other people think of them.
Right.
Which Gia ends up making this statement to Atticus, like, we need to stop letting their fear shape us. And she's referring to their parents, but I think that really could factor in everything that's going on. We can't let that fear shape who we are as human beings, as people. And
Right.
so
We can't have this control dictate who we are. We are people, and we are beings. We have our own culture. We have our own rights, and we should recognize who we are, and don't let the world corrupt who we are.
exactly.
Don't let all this corrupt who we are. And I want to go back to the whole thing of leaving. And the Japanese soldier was like, because Gia asked, why did you guys come where, where you're part of the military? Why were you even coming to this war? Like, what are you doing? And he was like, I was drafted.
Yeah.
I was drafted here.
I didn't choose this.
I didn't do this on purpose. And to see Atticus talk about, I want to escape this, it really speaks of how some Black soldiers want to leave, even the racism that was going on there, and their own trauma and their own issues, just to find a way to escape, to travel, to get outside of this. And then only to escape and to be a part of something else that's controlling them.
Right.
But it's like, wow.
Like, did you really escape?
Did you really escape or become a part of America 2.0? When just like you said, the same practices extended through the military.
Yep.
In the 1950s.
So, just a lot of trauma, just a lot of bloodshed. Just war is not good. War tears people apart. It's just I respect those that do it and those that go, because I don't know if I could ever voluntarily, like Atticus, take myself out there, escape or no escape.
Right.
It's not made for everybody.
It's
And
not.
those that do it, I commend those, because that is a sacrifice in itself, and not everybody is equipped, to be able to take on that sacrifice. So my respect to those who do and who have fought in the war, in various wars, and continue to,
Right.
It is something that they will always get my respect for that. So as we close out, there is a moment, the last scene, that gets us to continue to further think. Lovecraft, y'all keep us thinking, and it's a trademark, because Lovecraft Country is good for their historical monologues. That it never fails. They always got you. And in this particular one, we're seeing Gia and her mother, walking through the snow to see the Mudang to try to fix the spell, to fix this curse, which ultimately does not happen. And as they're going to the Mudang, you hear the words of Judy Garland, which are taken from left behind audio tapes. And it was creepy as I was listening to it, because I was like, who is that? And when I heard that it was Judy Garland, I was like, man, I've never heard Judy Garland like that. And
No.
it just was scary because it was like her voice was not the Judy Garland that we hear in like The Wizard of Oz or even in, Meet Me in St. Louis. And it's the words that she says that really. Yeah, she was. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was like, thank you.
She says, they've tried to kill me along the way, and by God, they won't. They won't. Ooh.
And it really, again, I was very, like shocked that it was Judy Garland too. Like when you told me it was Judy Garland, and I was like, it really does speak to even us and our experience as Black people. You won't kill us. They tried, but it didn't happen. We're still living. We're still triumphing. We're still, of course, fighting, but we're here. And you see the same with Gia, where she went through all this, and she's still here.
Still here.
In the 1950s, but you get the point.
Yeah, this episode was one, rewatching it and going back to it. Like I said, got a lot of good nuggets out of it. Got a lot of, understanding the similarities, with it, to the Black experience. Because like I said, this takes place in Korea. So, we're in a whole nother world, we're in a whole nother space. But just because we traveled somewhere else doesn't mean the struggles don't follow. That the trauma doesn't happen. And
exactly. So yeah, it was. I mean, I really appreciated the episode the second time.
Yeah.
Because I was able to really. The first time we was watching it, we were just watching it. We're like, everything's great, and so we really need to break it down. As we broke it down more the second time, it was like, okay, this was a good episode. This was a great episode, actually. We were able to really sit down and really break down and talk about the different points that it brought up and connected to the previous episode and the later episode.
Right.
So, as we draw to close, oh my gosh, I can't talk. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. And I hope you tune in for our next episode where we will be talking about His House, which is a movie on Netflix. And it's would you call it a psychological thriller?
Yeah, absolutely.
Psychological thriller. It's amazing. So we will be talking about that in our next episode, which I hope you all tune in to watch.
Yes, and we're gonna keep going with the theme of the diaspora and and thrillers and horror. So this is another one. We're gonna take a journey with this episode. So yes, as you said, make sure you tune in. You don't want to miss it. You never want to miss it, but just go on the journey with us. Like I said, when you get off, then you miss things. Then you got to come back. So yeah, we hope that you will be back on the next time. So, and until then, remember the past is a living thing. The present prepares for us, and the future is ours. We'll see y'all the next time.
Thank you.